I'm very particular about my shortbread. This is the only one that I have.
Shortbread never comes up in like the best biscuits argument, but it really should.
People don't know, innit?
Welcome to A Different Corner, a fantasy football podcast with me, Manish Verma, and Dr Luman Ali. Luman, there's a orange glow lighting your face from below. You're not on top of a volcano. Well, although the toastiness from it looks like it. What is lighting up your face with this orange glow?
It's not my smile for sure. It's it's the warm glow of a heater because it's absolutely terrible out there. Chucking it down cold, but I've got my throw over my lap.
It's toasty season, but we know we're getting old when we're both sat there with blankets on us. You've just had a cuppa, I've just had a coffee, and this is what is it? Pumpkin spice season. That's what it is.
It's a
The leaves are falling.
Well, I like to call it a blanket approach.
Blanket approach. It's munching down a few shortbread biscuits. It's that kind of weather, isn't it? And we know we're getting old when we're talking about shortbread biscuits and which is the best one. But this is a fantasy football podcast, Lumen. I want to read out possibly the most depressing Wikipedia entry I've ever come across, Lumen. I'm going to say this with gravitas and with some sincerity and deep sadness in my voice here. Ready? Andres Iniesta is a Spanish former professional footballer who played as a midfielder. That is the opening line to a Wikipedia entry for Andres Iniesta, a former professional footballer. Lumen, you're a big fan of Andres Iniesta. Let's just reflect on his career in short terms, but his retirement. He has finally, at the age of 40, left the beautiful game. Possibly the most beautiful footballer. I don't know. You tell me.
An absolutely incredible player. I mean, I don't know where to start, but it tells us a lot about our age where, we're talking about certain players that gave us a lot of joy. And Pep Guardiola's Barcelona was must-watch television. It was absolutely must-watch television. I'd tune in to every Barcelona game. Just the beauty of that football was just something else. And Iniesta was a big part of it. It was interesting because I went to see Barcelona play Athletic Bilbao back in 2012 with a couple of mates. To specifically see Messi play live. But after the game, it was all about Iniesta because he was the guy on the pitch. And I read on a forum afterwards, someone wrote, people go to Barcelona to watch Messi play, but they come out talking about Iniesta. And that's exactly what it was.
Really?
And it was just absolutely incredible. His touch, his control, his poise, everything. So an absolutely amazing player, won everything. And then I'm not a huge fan of comparisons, but let's get into the comparison. And the closest player to Andres Iniesta is Zidane in terms of playing on that left central midfield, dribbling style. But more importantly, both of them, you remember them for turning up in the biggest moments. Ronaldo, Messi, these guys, you remember them for the game in, game out brilliance, but you don't remember them so much for like, wow, this was the one game where they did something. Zidane, World Cup final, scores a couple of headers. Another World Cup final, chips a penalty. European championships, he turns up. Then Champions League final, he scores an all-time volley. But then Iniesta's got the same volume of outstanding moments, and whether it's the famous goal against Chelsea or the World Cup final goal. But Iniesta is the only player in history to be man of the match in a World Cup final, in a European Championship final, and in a Champions League final. Player of the tournament in 2012. So I would put him up there on a par with Zidane, if not slightly higher. And some people might be like, "Oh, you might be going a bit overboard." But it also got me thinking about, we have this tendency to really look at players beyond their skill level and look at their personality and give them a couple of extra points for that. So
Yeah.
if you're a Paul Gascoigne, or if you're a George Best, or a
Mm.
Maradona, or a Zidane with that kind of personality, you always get a
Yeah.
bit. Whereas if you're a bit quieter like Iniesta, you don't get noticed a bit more. But if we're talking
Mm.
about pure football, Iniesta, oh, what an incredible player, and up there as one of the best of all time.
I do think Iniesta gets a bit of a. Does he get the credit? He probably does still get all the credit, but it's the sexiness, right? Zidane, French footballer, his image projected on the Arc de Triomphe. That is that late 90s, early 2000s. He is Mr. Football. He's French. He's got this arrogance, this dirtiness about him as well, right? Headbutting Materazzi in a final. There is. You know what Zidane is. He was this guy. You're right. Gaza has the
Yeah,
same. Ronaldo, I think, has this personality of just being a machine, just being, I am the best. Messi has it in a way. Iniesta was understated almost his entire career. But you look at the medals, the trophies he's won, the titles the accolades he individually and team ones. It's just like, gosh, this guy was
yeah,
pure football. And watching him on the pitch, I don't think whilst I see the sort of comparisons with Zidane in his grace and the turns, I don't know if I've ever seen a player who diminutive and he gets out of spaces I've never seen
yeah,
anyone get out
yeah.
of. Unbelievable the tightness of where he used to play and operate and ask for the ball. And you're thinking, don't why are you going in there? Why? And then all of a sudden you pop it to him in. He's round three players and he's gone. I've never seen anything like that sort of player. You see big number nines. You see that really strong holding midfielders. Those massive brutes of centre backs. But I don't know what profile of player Andres Iniesta
He's a
is. Right?
one-off.
He's
He's
just
a
he's a
one-off.
one-off.
Absolutely incredible, and gave so much joy just to watch him play. What is fascinating is that there's an Andres Iniesta documentary from a few years ago, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I have never seen such a star-studded lineup of
Mm.
guests that were queuing up to praise him. I've never
Well,
seen, and I think that is the ultimate tribute. Is who appeared on that show.
Andres Iniesta retired from football this past week. Gosh, what a shame. Imagine if we saw him in fantasy football. How much would he be worth? How many points would he have been scoring, especially in that season, those seasons you mentioned under Pep? But let's fast forward to fantasy Premier League of today and where we're at. Where we wanted to, I mean, we've had no game week to reflect on, so we don't know what points or anything like that. But what we can talk about, Lumen, I suppose, is how we're feeling about our teams. We are 7 game weeks in. We've just had an international break. There is another international break coming up in 4 games. What do we do in those 4 games? Do we commit to a wild card? I was committed to a wild card, and then I've seen a blooming international break coming up. How are you feeling about your team? What are you thinking for the next, October to November?
I think both our teams are very similar in the sense that we're walking what I like to call the Haaland tightrope. And the
Okay.
tightrope
Yeah.
is this: we neither of us have him in our team.
Mm.
We have weeks where he just goes off on one, right? and we see, oh my God, people are captaining him, and they're cashing in, and we're not.
Yeah.
And we think we gotta get him in. But then
Yeah.
we look at the sacrifices that we have to make to get him in, and we have to get rid of quality players who are getting us points, and you think, is it worth it? I think this Haaland tightrope will be walked by us all season.
That's a good way of describing it, because each game week comes and it is an intake of breath, whether Haaland scores, braces, and then we're in big trouble. But we are both Haalandless, and you are in the overall, 10 million FPL players, 263,000th in the world, right?
Yep.
That is fantastic. I'm in the top million. I'm about 888,000th in the world without Erling Haaland, which just goes to show that the rest of our boys have been doing it. You went big on Cole Palmer. You've had Mo Salah, Bukayo Saka. You've now got Havertz and Ollie Watkins. These are top draw players who are bringing in the points. But the issue is, Lumen, how long can we keep? I feel like I've got a toe on that, off that tightrope, and I think I've been closer to you to getting him in than you have been to getting him in. But why are you further away from getting Haaland in than me, perhaps?
Because of where I am in the world and how I've done without him. What will change my mind in terms of the tightrope and really looking to get him in is, number one, he has to carry on the run of form, but number two,
Mm.
Mo Salah. Mo Salah, he had 10 points against Wolves, but he's not been the same Mo Salah that started this season. And I need to see what he's going to do, especially with these tough fixtures on the
Yeah,
horizon. So
yeah.
that'll be that. But overall, I think I've got a whole load of players that I'm happy with, right? But then there's a whole load that David Raya. I mean, David Raya, I got David Raya in out of pure frustration after his first 2 weeks, because the first 2 weeks he absolutely killed it. 8 points and
Yeah.
10 points. And I thought, oh, I need to get him in. But since then, he's got 2, 9, 4, 1, and 2. Just one return effectively, right? Big return.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you look and say, okay, are Arsenal's defense as tight as you think they are? But for now, Raya stays in, right?
Mm.
But we can see
Mm-hmm.
that there's the light Onana, top scorer,
Mm.
and he's cheaper. And then my defenders, look, I'm not going to cry about it. I've gambled on my defenders where I'm picking 4.5 million pound defenders and just hoping that they get me points. So
Yeah.
it's not an expect. My defenders, it's hoping for points rather than expecting to get points. My midfield, on
Mm.
the whole, I'm happy with 4 out of the 5. 3 out of the 5 definitely, which is Palmer, Saka,
Mm-hmm.
and Mbeumo. Mo, it'll all depend on how he does international break. Smith Rowe's an interesting one. He's done well for me at that price. He went up
Yeah.
to 5.8, but he's back to 5.7. I need to see,
Mm-hmm.
is he gonna do enough, because he was on the bench last game, and I need to consider if there's a better budget option out there, like a Morgan Rogers, for example.
Yeah.
So that's that. And
Can I say something
yeah,
about Smith Rowe? I feel like I've got love for him being an ex-Arsenal man,
yeah,
but I've also got to say I think he could be this season's, maybe not as high scoring, but this season's Anthony Gordon, because he is a homeboy. Anthony Gordon just blasted home fixtures last season. He was returning every time. This season, Emil Smith Rowe plays at home to Leicester, 10 points. Plays away to Ipswich, nothing, 2 points. Plays at home to West Ham, 7 points. At home to Newcastle, 8 points. Then plays away again and again, and nothing and nothing. He scored all of his points at home. And I feel like at that price point, because you can switch him out, you can bench him on away games. I think he's a really good asset to have at that
Yeah.
price. Stick him in at home, away, bench him. That's how I feel about
I
him.
hadn't noticed that, but thanks for pointing it out, and that'll inform my strategy. And then
There you
and
go.
then up top, Havertz I'm happy with, Watkins I'm happy with, Raul I'm happy with. So I'm happy
Yeah.
with my team on the whole. Although
Mm,
the big one will be Mo. The big one will
yeah.
be Mo, because if he continues in this bad vein of form in front of goal, where he's just not, he's just weird. His final pass and his finish is not what it was before the international break. You have to watch Liverpool to understand what I'm saying, right?
I like that you're looking. The eye test
Yeah.
tells you a lot. The numbers, FPL wise, when we're looking at 7 game weeks, he's got 4 double-digit returns. And so there's the difference, isn't it? The numbers say keep him in. The eyes say, oh, I'm not quite sure. If you were to get rid of Mo, that is a good chunk of change, 12.7 million that you're freeing up. What are you thinking?
It's Haaland. It's to take
Ah,
it's to bring in. I'd have to bring in a budget midfielder for that, and then swap
hmm
out Watkins or Havertz for Haaland. So
fine, fine. So that would be your Haaland
yeah.
move.
What
It's
about
a, it's
you?
a
How
sit and assess
how are you feeling
situation.
about your team?
Not as nearly as positive as you, because I was making little tiny short-term changes just before the international break. For example, I got in Max Kilman. That's not a long-term decision I want to make. I've got Concert. That's probably a long-term one I want to get rid of. I brought in Semenyo again for short-term fixtures because his next 3 are horrible. I've got a lot in my team that I still got Eze, for example. He should have been out a long time ago. So actually mine requires greater surgery. The core is very good. Jackson, Watkins, Havertz, Jota, question mark. Salah, question mark. Saka has been good. Kanate has been good. So I'm probably happy with half of my squad and unhappy with the other
C-
half.
c- c-
My biggest problem is I've got 4 game weeks and there's another international break. And so that's problematic for
Can
me.
I just pick up on something you said?
Mm.
You were happy about your forward line. How can you consider
hmm
thinking about Haaland when your front forward line is doing it for you?
I suppose it gets on to my next bit, which is all about upcoming fixtures.
Okay.
If we could, I've had a look at all
Okay.
20 teams' upcoming fixtures, and the FPL site has this very handy fixture difficulty rating. It's based on, and it's a movable thing, so it can change the last 6 games. And they look at Opta stats and all this kind of stuff, and they rate it from easy to hard. So a dark green is easy, a light green is easier, grey is about evenly matched, red is hard. The maroon red is the really difficult ones, and they are basically Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal.
Yeah.
They're essentially those games, and they base it on the past 6 games results, so it can change. And I've had a look, firstly, Lumen, at the top 4 currently: Liverpool, Arsenal, City, and Chelsea. And by far, I would say the next 4 to 6 games, Man City have the best run of games. And so that Haaland tightrope makes me think, oh, I, I should be investing in Haaland there. They have Wolves away, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, Brighton away. Then they've got Spurs and Liverpool. But that first 4 is just giving me big FOMO vibes if I don't have Haaland in. That's my problem there. Um, the other teams, Arsenal, actually have a really difficult next set of fixtures. We've got Bournemouth away, Liverpool, Newcastle, then Chelsea, and then Forest, who have been very good this season so far for my money. Um, Liverpool is the really interesting one. Liverpool is like, what are Liverpool going to do this season away from just FPL? Who are Liverpool? I think may be answered in the next few games. Chelsea at home, Arsenal away, Brighton at home, Villa at home. Southampton away, then Man City and Newcastle. Really interesting. If Liverpool are title contenders, Luman, are we finding out in the next 6 game weeks whether they are or not?
I don't think it's in there. I think even if we do well in the next month, I think we'll fall short of a title challenge. And the reason I say that is because for me, it's never about 4 games or 8 games. It's about the whole season. And Liverpool are just there's a couple of things that are concerns for me. Firstly, the reason why our title challenge fizzled out last season is because the last 2 months of the season, our forwards just could not score at all. It looks easy on the eye when you see that Diaz has scored a certain amount of goals and Salah scored a certain amount of goals. But when you watch them play and you see
Mm,
the chances that are being missed, you're like, yikes. This is a concern. And secondly, I just think squad depth wise in certain positions over the course of a season, if we're talking about injuries and fitness, etc., I think it's going to kick in, especially in midfield. We've got the Soboslai, Gravenberch, and McAllister doing fantastic. Curtis Jones is the first choice backup, but beyond that, that's why I wouldn't. I'd love it if we signed Zubimendi in January. You
mm,
need that competition for places. You just need that. And season before last, um, Arsenal fans talk a lot about Saliba getting injured and then the knock-on effect, etc. And then look what you've done since then. Timber,
mm.
Calafiori, you've really planned ahead. And I just
Yeah.
think that Liverpool, over a course of a season, are lacking there.
For me, from a non-Liverpool fan perspective, if you can come away from those 6 games with, 4 wins, yeah, you're right up there for me. You're right up there
I
for me.
think I
But
just
it's gonna
think
be
it's a
interesting.
straight race between Arsenal and Man City, and
Fair
Man.
enough.
If Arsenal don't do it this season, I don't know when they will,
Yeah.
based on a number of factors. The number one being Rodri, such a huge miss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Number two, them not signing many players and putting faith in the
Mm,
likes of Oscar Bob and Rico Lewis.
mm.
And thirdly, the 115 charges or whatever they are, and that hanging over. If Arsenal don't take advantage this season, then I
Yeah.
suppose they'll have to wait till Pep leaves.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. You're right. You're right. Yeah. So basically, on the next 4 to 6 game weeks, I see it as Man City having the best run. Liverpool and Arsenal actually do have really difficult runs. Just, Chelsea are in the top 4 right now. And we've gone big on few Chelsea players here, especially Cole Palmer, but there are others to consider. But they've not got it easy the next few games. Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, Man U away, Arsenal at home. That's the next 4, and then there's an international break. So, of the top 4 currently, gosh, 3 of those 4 have got real difficult runs.
Yeah,
Man City, for me, have got the best run. Just notable mentions elsewhere, though, Lumen. Everton. Everton, who had a horrible start to the season, have got 5 of their next 6 or those light green, easy-ish
yeah.
fixtures. Pretty interesting. Man United. Man United have got not bad run. Brentford at home, West Ham away, Chelsea but at home, Leicester at home. Those next 4, 3 are at home. And last podcast, we talked about their defense. And that might be a time to stock up on their defenders.
If there's one thing that I've learned this year about fantasy football is forget the data, forget XG, forget all of that, right? If it was down to XG, Bruno Fernandes would be the top scorer in fantasy football. So
Yeah.
forget XG and all of that. What I've learned about fantasy football is you've got to really look at each team, who's playing, who's not playing, and how that impacts the rest of the team. So I'll give you a couple of
Mm.
examples. I started off the season with Mikolenko, budget
Yeah.
defender. I thought Everton, since the turn of the year, only behind Arsenal in terms of clean sheets, etc., and being watertight. But had I used my head, which I didn't, then I would have seen that they're going to be in trouble without Jared Branthwaite,
Right.
and that is a concern. And the reason I'm mentioning all of this is because FDR, it's so appetizing. You just look at it and you think, yeah, you know what, this stuff gonna happen, right? Let me just throw a couple of things at you. If I said to you that Man City are gonna play Fulham at home and they're gonna score 3 goals,
Yeah.
you're gonna expect
Yeah.
Haaland to have something out of that, but he didn't have anything out of it. But then
Yeah.
when we talk about FDR, what's the FDR for Arsenal at home to Leicester, then Arsenal at home to Southampton?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not dismissing it completely, but I would take it
Hmm.
with a pinch of salt. What do you think about my new approach, which is WWJD?
WWJD. Go on, explain what WWJD is.
What would Jimmy do?
So, for listeners that don't know, Jimmy is my cousin, and he is just having a season, isn't he? He is every weekend just banging points, even when Haaland doesn't do anything. He just returns. He put in Martinelli when no one else had Martinelli, for example. He's just been doing it. Where is Jimmy in the world? Holy moly, check this out.
10,926.
10,926th in the world. WWJD. He's going to be listening to this laughing because he keeps getting a shout out in our podcast. But what would Jimmy do, Luman? I messaged Jimmy, obviously, I message him regularly about FPL. And I asked him about Martinelli. And he says, I think my tactic is to play like I did when we first started playing. This is many years ago. Pure hunches and quote marks vibes when picking players. And then he does the praying emoji. So he's basically going, again, you're right, not the data, just going on the eye test and what he thinks and his pure hunches. And it's getting him to the top 11,000th in the world.
He needs to share those vibes so we can have a vibes cartel.
What would Jimmy do? That's a great philosophy. So we're now going to start thinking about what is in my cousin's head and what he will do next. I don't know what he'll be doing next, actually, Lumen. Shall we talk about game week 8 and the fixtures coming up?
Brutal fixtures.
Go on. Let's start off. Spurs West Ham.
Spursy, innit?
They're
Oh
at
God.
home, and I just rate them at home. That's the thing with Spurs.
I mean, Spurs they just every year they're just the gift that keeps on giving. That Bournemouth game was like Spurs' entire existence in microcosm. Go up,
Yeah, it really
by
was.
2 and have all their fans cheering and etc. And then lose
3-2.
3-2. But
Gosh.
that's two very inconsistent teams. That's literally a feast
Yeah.
or famine game where you'll either feast with the likes of Brennan Johnson or Mikhail Antonio or Bowen or Kudus or all the usual
Mm.
suspects, or you'll fall flat on your face. It's whether you're going to
Yeah.
gamble on them or not. I don't want to even call that game.
I'll
Because
call it. I'm going for Spurs on that one. I just think at home they're a different team, are they? I don't know, but I just like Spurs for that one. And whilst I'm doing the fixtures here, Lumen, I'm going to also tell you who the top scoring player is for each team. Okay, so we've got Spurs versus West Ham, and that is James Maddison, 39 points versus who's it for West Ham? Jared Bowen. He's not had the best seasons as compared to last season, but he's still their top scoring player, 36 points. The next game, Fulham versus Aston Villa. That is a real messy one.
both teams doing really well in the league this season. I'm going to call that a draw.
Hmm.
I hope Smith Rowe does it at home, like you said, but I'm not sure. But it's it's going to be interesting to see how Villa do as the season goes on with the fixture pile up.
Yeah,
Um, they did
absolutely.
have more fixtures last season in the Europa League, but the intensity is cranked up a bit because of the Champions League. So, but I'm going to call
Mm.
that a draw.
I'm calling that a Fulham win. I just think Fulham are very strong, especially at home this season. And Villa have been very good, but I just think a defeat is on the cards there. Fulham's top scoring player this season, Emile Smith Rowe. Aston Villa's top scoring player this season, Ollie Watkins, 41 points. Ipswich versus Everton.
Another draw. Both teams have played better of late.
It could even be a goalless draw for me. I say that
Oh, I've
Liam
lost you.
Delap is Ipswich's top scorer this season. We talked about him as a very interesting budget option, and at home to Everton, who have not been very good defensively, but they've got Dwight McNeil, and he scored 41 points for Everton this season, and he's a very good budget midfield option as well. Man U at home to Brentford.
Man U to win and win comfortably. They're in this pattern, and I love it. Same thing happened under Solskjaer, where they had some bad results. There's question marks of the manager, and just when you thought
Mm-hmm.
that they're gone, they're going to be sacked, they pull it back with some good results or a trophy or whatever, and that keeps them in post a little longer. And I think, as Les Rio Ferdinand would say, "We're back, baby! Yeah, we're back." So yeah, Man United are back with a win against Brentford.
Andre Onana is actually their top scorer this season. Andre Onana for Man United. And Brentford, of course, it's your boy. It's your boy, Brian. Brian Mbuemo. What a signing this season he's been. But I'm with you. I think Man U win that game because I just don't like Brentford away from home. Newcastle versus Brighton. You're right, mate. Just going through these fixtures, there's not one that we can be guaranteed on, by the way. There is so many icky ones at the minute. Newcastle, Brighton.
Another tough one. I think it'll be a draw because Newcastle and Brighton again. Interesting. Brighton not as good as they were at the start, but they're not a bad team still. And Newcastle have done well in spite of injuries. I'm going to call that a draw.
Okay, Newcastle, Brighton. I think Newcastle are winning that game. Their top scorer this season has been Harvey Barnes. Brighton's top scorer this season has been Danny Welbeck. I don't like Brighton going away from home. I also think they're a bit too open this season. I think Newcastle get that win. Southampton at home to Leicester, two of the promoted teams, two of the relegation favourites, though Leicester have been much better than Southampton this season. There is a player at Southampton I do like because he actually ripped us up. Tyler Dibbling at Southampton is a really good player if you watch him. He's really young. He's like this lanky, excellent on the ball, and he really roasted Calafiori a couple times. I'm like, wow, he's a good player. He's their top scorer, 18 points. Leicester, James Justin, that tells you all you need to probably know about Leicester. It was most of those points coming from that Arsenal game. He's got 29 points for them. Who are you
I think
taking there?
Leicester will win that. Southampton,
Mm-hmm.
very heavy possession based team. And I think Leicester will do enough to win. So I'm going for Leicester in that game.
I think I'm with you on that one. I think it's that or a draw. I can't see Southampton winning, I'm afraid. Bournemouth at home to Arsenal. What a
The
sticky
only
fixture
the
that is. You're
only
going to tell
fix
me
the only fixture that's not icky.
it's icky. It's
It's
icky.
not icky.
Bournemouth
Arsenal
away. You don't want to
Arsenal
go
are
to.
gonna feast but against a
No.
Bournemouth team that likes to come out with the ball and play very attacking football, and Arsenal just gonna pick them off. They're gonna pick them off.
We need post Christmas Arsenal from last season where we were just a wall of defence. I feel like if we can do that away clean sheet run again, then we'll be okay. I
I
think it's a
think
Nicky fixture.
I don't. I think Arsenal will win, and they'll win convincingly.
Wolves at home to Man City. Now, if we're talking about one fixture that is not an icky fixture, one that is a guarantee nailed on, it's Wolves for surely at home to Man City.
Why do you say that when you're so high on Wolves?
I'm not this season. I love Gary O'Neill. I really like this squad of players, but they have not been doing it. They are not doing it. It's just not. And I can't see how they're getting out of it because Wolves have got Man City. They've got to go away to Brighton. Then they've got Crystal Palace and Southampton. So there's a chance of them doing something there, but I'm worried for Wolves. I'm worried for Gary O'Neill, and definitely worried for them this weekend with Haaland coming to town. I can't see anything other than a Man City win.
I think Man City will win, but I just think that the control that Rodri gave him is gone. Conceding two
Yeah,
goals at home to Fulham. They're going to win, Man City, but not convincingly. So there you go.
sorry.
With that, Haaland will score 5 goals, and I'll have him in my team for the following week.
Mateus Cunha is Wolves' top scorer. Obviously, Erling Haaland is Man City's top scorer. But can I say, of all the top teams, so we're talking about the teams where you probably invested most of your money: Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, and Arsenal. The current top four. Um, Man City's spread of points in FPL is shocking. Like Erling Haaland obviously takes it. The second top scoring player for them has been Kovacic at 36 points, and he scored 2 goals in one game. So we know where his points have come most this season.
Yeah.
Their points have only come from their big Norwegian.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no one else.
There's
No
there,
one else.
there's several
Is
there's
Foden finally coming to the party? I don't know when Foden's coming to the party.
there's several reasons. Number one, it's the same year in year out with Pep Roulette. Number two, their defense is not keeping clean sheets. Number three, in terms of midfield, Foden's not been playing. De Bruyne's been injured. And Gundogan, if you've seen him in front of goal, this guy's gone the other way. He's just not finishing. So there's a number of factors there, and you want to stay clear of Man City assets because of how expensive they are as well.
Fine, apart from Erling Haaland. I'm just wondering when Phil Foden's coming to the party. I think surely he must be ready. Surely. Who we got next? Liverpool at home to Chelsea. Liverpool's top scorer has been Mo Salah. The spread of points has been fairly even. There's Diaz up there, Jota up there, Trent up there, even Becker, who we should. Allison, I'm talking about the goalkeeper. He's got a big red flag on him. Lumen, what's the deal with Allison
He's
in
got an
goal?
injury and he's out until at least the next international break. So
Oh wow.
if you want to get a Liverpool goalkeeper, Quaveen Kelleher, nice and cheap
Mm.
option. But Chelsea have not had a great few years. Having said that, the majority of games they play against Liverpool end up in a draw. Chelsea
Wow.
and Liverpool, I'd call every game a draw. Even if Chelsea, didn't have a single first team player playing, I'd call it a draw because it's just too many draws.
Obviously, Cole Palmer is their top scorer. He's the joint top scorer in the FPL. But there's also Madueke. He's the second top scorer. Jackson, who's also up there. So their spread of points has been pretty good. So if you want to go away from Palmer, there are players to be had. And then finally, Nottingham Forest versus Crystal Palace to end us on Monday evening. Where do you see that one?
I fancy Forest. I think Forest are very solid this season. They
Yeah.
a horrible team to play against for Liverpool and Chelsea have found that out. And Crystal
Yeah.
Palace, you've seen what happens without Elise.
Eze is their top scorer, but it's still at only 23 points. And Chris Wood is Forest's top scorer, 39 points. That's a good budget striker to have there. And at home to Crystal Palace, not bad. So that brings us to game week 8, Lumen. Where will we be?
We'll be there. We'll be there. Looking forward to it immensely.
Looking for what biscuit are we going for the next podcast? I'm a fan of ginger. I love a ginger nut, a ginger and lemon, that sort of vibe. How do you feel about that?
Nah, I like it simple and classic. Shortbread, oat shortbread.
Very good. Well, I'll see you for a biscuit and a cuppa. We will be there.
We will definitely be there.